Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hokyoji Zen Practice Community's Sunday Dharma Talk. This morning we have the honor and privilege of hearing from Tim Macejak. Tim has been involved in Zen practice for over 30 years. He began Zen practice at a teacherless sangha led by a group of experienced practitioners, and then practiced with a teacher at Cedar Rapids Zen Center, followed by some years with an at-home practice. He has done a yearly retreat at Hokyoji since the early 90s. He was formerly our board president, and he is the author of the book Zen Unleashed, Everyday Buddhist Wisdom from Man's Best Friend, released in 2013. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, everyone. So I gave my talk a title, the title being The Three Stooges and Airline Stewardesses Teach Buddhism. And I don't know about making a title like this because it sets up some pretty high expectations. It may be an error in giving a talk like this, but I'll do my best to at least come close. But before, the first thing I want to talk about is my dog. We have a rescue dog, had her about 10 years. She was dropped off along the side of a road where people often drop dogs that don't work out for dog fighting. And so we have her loose in our 3/4 acre yard. We have one of those underground electric fences professionally installed. I know not everyone likes those, but she's only crossed the border once, shortly after we got it. And so for 10 years, she's been out loose in our yard and just enjoying life and being a very happy dog. So since our biggest concern actually is, since she doesn't leave the yard, this electric fence works just well, is people wandering into our yard. And she's, like many dogs, very protective of the property. So we put up a sign to try and keep people from just wandering onto the property. I'm going to share that sign with you. And everyone can see that? Jushin, that's seen, I assume?
Not yet.
Okay.
I know sharing is turned on. Participants can share. Let me see. For reasons surpassing understanding, Zoom just changed all of their settings in menus. Let me see here. Are you sure you shared it? Sometimes you have to click twice on the window.
Yeah, let me redo share screen.
There we go.
Oh, okay. It was Tim error, must be the operator. Okay, so this sign I had made up here on the left: do not enter. Please ring bell and wait so we can put our dog inside. Invisible fence and force. There's a cowbell hanging there on a post. I added an arrow just to help people look in the right spot. But anyways, this sign turned out to be actually a little inadequate. It turns out people get tunnel vision. They would pull their vehicle into our driveway, even though it's 2.5 feet by 2 feet size. So it was kind of dangerous because our dog, like I said, she's protective. So I made a second sign. And let me zoom up. There's Annie. She's posing so nice because I told her she was going to get a treat. But the sign says, stop, dog loose, please go back and ring cowbell at start of driveway. So people miss the first sign, but you're walking up to our back porch, and the dog can go right to the steps and no further. That's kind of where the fence cuts her off. So that's worked pretty well. You know, people get the tunnel vision, they go past the first sign, they see the second sign, they kind of stop, a little confused for a moment, kind of look back, wander back slowly, see the cowbell, ring it. Sometimes not very loud, but it's usually not enough the dog can hear it with her hearing. Anyways, one day I was in the backyard, and sometimes people take walks in front of our house. That's kind of like a circular path in the neighborhood. And I saw this person start walking up our driveway, and the signs were meaning like nothing to him. I mean, you could tell he was going to reach the back steps in seconds. So I started running and yelling from the backyard, "Stop, stop, stop, stop." And he stopped, confused. He said, "Hold on a second, let me get my dog inside." I call Annie, and he comes. She sees the guy. She starts barking, but I tell her kennel. She goes inside the house. I give her a treat for immediate reward for the recall. Come back outside, and I ask the guy, "Didn't you see the signs, the two signs here?" And he says to me, "Oh, I thought those were just for vehicles." So, how does this make any sense? Dog loose, stop, dog outside. And I was very confused. Um, however, I got a hint from Larry from the Three Stooges. I'm going to play a 30-second clip from the 2000 Three Stooges, so it's not the originals. I'm going to play a 30-second clip of Larry. I'll just say, when this movie came out, Roger Ebert was still alive, and he said, I have no idea why anyone would want to do a remake of the Three Stooges, but if you're going to do one, this is the best possible version. So that's my plug for the movie in case you haven't seen it. But let me do share screen again. And we'll play 30 seconds. Larry's going to teach us something here.
On $830,000. We prefer it in hundreds, folks. Wow. In the wrong hands, this thing could be dangerous. Guys, even at
Okay, so our mind may have a predisposition toward seeing warning signs as pertaining to other people and not ourselves. So the guy walking up the driveway, those signs were for other people. For Larry, this is could be dangerous. People should be careful with this. And so that's all good and well. My conclusion would be that I don't do that, right? Unfortunately, I have a story to share. And I'll lead into it just by saying I am a good driver. I've only been in one accident that was my fault in my life, and actually I'm a defensive driver, so only a couple accidents that weren't. And I need to say that before I tell this story because I was going to enter a highway, so you got the merging lane, and there was a sign there that said, "1 lane ahead, be prepared to stop." And I actually thought to myself, that's a good sign. People need to pay attention to that because that's kind of dangerous, interstate with just 1 lane. And I know I thought this because around 15 seconds later, I said, "Oh shit, 1 lane." And I hit the brakes hard because I was totally unprepared for just 1 lane at 65 miles an hour or whatever they were doing. And I, got on safely and everything. But so here I was, and it was like the sign was for somebody else. So the question is, do we do this with Buddhist teachings? And I think it's pretty safe to say that when I am reading a Buddhist book with Buddhist teachings, I don't say to myself, wow, my coworkers could really use this. Or my neighbor, this would be good teaching for my neighbor. I think usually, I'm relating it to myself. I'm reading it for my life. But 100% of the time, am I always really realizing it's for myself? And so there's a Buddhist teacher, Thanissaro Bhikkhu, who talks about this some, about that there's a trap we can do. Of course, the first trap is the Buddhist teachings can cause us to be judgmental of others. And we've all met religious people extremely judgmental, even though their religion clearly says, don't be judgmental. But then there's the more subtle trap, so to speak, of kind of bypassing the teaching around ourselves. We think this is a great tool for people to heal, and whatever, but we're not really relating it to ourselves. And one thing that can open us up to this as a predisposition is the Zen teaching that Zen practice is not a self-improvement program. It's not for ourselves. And we have the bodhisattva ideal, that we're more concerned with other people's liberation than our own. This Thanissaro talks about how the Dharma is a mirror, not a window. And if you look at a teaching and see someone else's face, you've turned it into a window. And I have a longer quote from him here. The Dharma is a mirror for us to look at ourselves at. The Buddha uses this image twice in the canon. In one case, you're like a young man or woman fond of adornment, looking in a mirror, checking your appearance. You see a blemish, so you want to get rid of the blemish. If there's no blemish, you can take satisfaction that you look good. Of course, here we're not concerned about looking good in physical terms. Our mirror here is our actions. That's the image the Buddha gives to Rahula, that our bodily, verbal, and mental actions should undergo repeated reflection. In other words, think about your actions through your body, your words, your thoughts. How would they look if you looked at them in a mirror? What shape would they have? How many blemishes would they have? And what could you do to get rid of the blemishes? That's what we're here for. Our problem, of course, is that our eyes point out. They don't point in very much. So we're seeing other people's actions. But we can use their actions usefully as a mirror, too. If you see someone do something that's really ugly to look at, you can ask yourself, do I do that? If you see them doing something that's really admirable, you can ask yourself, could I do that? In other words, keep referring things back to your own thoughts, words, and deeds, straightening them out, and using the Buddhist standards. It's all too easy when you're looking in the mirror to say, okay, I look okay for today. The question should be, whose standards are you using? One part of this passage I really like is when he's talking about using other people as a mirror. So, that the disposition we might have toward judging other people instead comes back to, am I doing that? And, the answer might be, no, I'm not doing that, but it's a worthwhile question to ask ourselves, because I think it's pretty well known that sometimes the people that annoy us the most are the ones that are kind of like us. They have some of the same things that we do, and we don't like seeing it in other people. And without even realizing that that's what's triggering us, sometimes that's what it is. And it's also nice that he brings up, when you see someone behaving admirably, ask yourself, could I do this? I think a lot of times we focus on the idea of the annoying people we meet in our life as being the Buddhas. There's Buddhas everywhere, And the greatest Buddha in our life is also the person that bothers us the most. And we can forget that the really nice people are also Buddhas, the kind people, the people setting up good examples for how to behave are also our teachers. It's the other ones that grab our attention a little bit more sometimes. Personal example, kind of illustrate the teaching here and kind of how it can play out. So when I worked at the post office, there was a coworker there who's very frustrating to be around. Everything was always unfair. She was a really good worker, really hard worker, liked working overtime, but everything was always unfair. So I'm at the time clock one day, ready to punch out. And she says, "What? You get to go home?" And I'm like, "Yeah, she's told me to go home." She said, "Well, I have to stay. How is that fair? That's not," I'm like, "I don't know. She just told me to go home." The very next day, supervisor tells me to stay a couple hours for overtime. And I'm walking past the time clock, and Linda is there at the time clock, and she says, "What, you get to stay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, she told me to stay." "Well, she told me I had to go. How is that fair?" And I'm like, so first thing when you meet a Buddha like this, learn how to practice no harm, because there's certain things I want to say, certain kind of things that want to come out of my mouth, but no harm. That's the first thing. And the second is, then we observe our mind, our thoughts. They're like the clouds passing through. At the moment, there's storm clouds with lightning, but it's just the show. It's just the scenery. Return to the breath. The breath is our anchor, and go on with my day. But the third thing that I should have done, which I don't think it even occurred to me, was ask myself, do I do that? The other two come to mind right away. Do no harm and, let go of, detach from the thoughts a little bit, but ask myself, do I do that? For the record, the answer is no. No, I do not. But I still should have been asking that question. So the other saying that he says in this passage, Tanasaro says, is, whose standards are you using when we're looking in the mirror? And I would suggest that the precepts are a pretty good group of standards to use. And just to run through them again, avoid killing, avoid stealing, avoid misuse of sex, avoid lying, avoid indulging in intoxicants, avoid speaking of the faults of others, avoid praising yourself while putting others down, avoid being stingy, including with the Buddhist teachings, avoid indulging in anger, and avoid slandering the three jewels. So I've had these described to me as a measuring stick or a thermometer. I think we could toss in the word mirror also. That this isn't a place where it's pass-fail or it's about right and wrong, and we're not robots. We will violate these. But the question is to occasionally do the mirror check, take the thermometer reading, and ask ourselves, am I doing each of these more than I used to, or less than I used to, or about the same amount as I used to? And to understand if a number of these are more than I used to, the patient's getting a little sicker. We may want to re-examine our practice a little, or what's going on, or try and figure out, what the situation is. I know for me, it's kind of avoid indulging in anger. For me, that could read avoid indulging in anger at inanimate objects. There's something about the screw that it's just stuck, that can set me off. Or I drop this little tiny washer in the grass, and after 5 minutes of looking for it, the F-bombs are definitely coming. But I know if I was doing this at work practice at Hokyoji, and I dropped that little tiny, hex nut into the grass, after 5 minutes passed, I would not be letting out F-bombs. So there is an element of control and awareness and a laziness, that is in my practice with inanimate objects. But I use it as a mirror. I reflect on it, and hopefully it'll improve one day. Just the fact that I acknowledge it's a thing already, that's huge, because otherwise there's no chance. So I wanted to return back to the idea that Buddhist practice, Zen practice, is not about ourselves and the Bodhisattva ideal. Because, this mirror, it's looking at ourselves, it's looking, and this whole idea of the warning signs being for other people. Well, obviously that's a problem, but it's still, you can see that warning kind of signs are kind of for other people too. So this Anasaro also writes on this. So let me read a shorter passage here. He writes, "This is not a selfish practice. One of the major misunderstandings about meditation is that you're just doing it for yourself. But if you straighten out your mind, it means that you're not subjecting other people to your greed, anger, and delusion. If you straighten out your mind and have a greater sense of ease, well-being, you're not constantly piling all sorts of extra stress and suffering on top of yourself. Then you're in a better position to be helpful, to show compassion to other people, to have the time, the energy, the will to help." So at this point, if you remember my title, some of you may be wondering where the airline stewardess is going to come into this. Well, here they are. I'm going to finish my talk with airline stewardesses, specifically the ones for Southwest Airlines. Apparently, they're a little quirky in their flight instructions. Say something to the passengers that's like exactly what I just read to you from Thanissaro Bhikkhu, except just a little more colloquial. So here we go. Southwest Airlines airline stewardesses and stewards. In the event of a sudden loss of cabin pressure, oxygen masks will drop from the ceiling above your seat. Please place the bag over your own mouth and nose before assisting children or other adults acting like children. That's my talk.
Questions, comments, challenges?
This is Juan Tran. Good morning, everyone. Tim, thank you so much for inviting me to your talk today. I enjoyed it very much. I do have a quick comment. And when you described the walker who walked up to your signs and said that perhaps the sign, he thought that the sign was meant for cars, the thought that came into my mind, and that was perhaps the signs were up not to protect the people coming through, but in order to protect the dog. So I think that's where he was coming from.
It's possible. And sometimes when you're driving onto a loading dock somewhere, there's all sorts of signs for a vehicle. Maybe he did that for a living or something, but still, they were for him.
Thank you, Tim. I just love dogs. I think dogs are some of the best Zen teachers. This there's a thing that I always think of. I think it's in the Platform Sutra. The sixth ancestor says that my practice is to always see my own faults, but never see the faults of others, which is even maybe You're offering a way to see the faults of others in a way that's helpful to my practice. And maybe the sixth ancestor Weining's um, practice is a little more strict or something. But I always think of that. There's this way that we always turn any kind of practice into a weapon to use against other people in sometimes really subtle ways. And then one thing also, the thing that I think I find always helpful with the precepts is that there's the pure precepts, which are kind of like the broadest version of the precepts, which is, do no do not do evil, and then do good. And what's the other one? Live for the benefit of all beings. So those are kind of like the principle of the precepts, that we should always keep in mind that anything anything that we do can be turned on its head, to some other purpose. And the practice, you have to keep measuring against these. Take the broadest possible view, So that's what brought it up for me.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Good morning, Tim. Just a couple of things. The one I see, I think the term of art these days is weaponized. A lot of the things are weaponized a lot these days is mindfulness. It's like if something goes wrong is you weren't mindful enough. It's like if you could just be more mindful. It's like, I'm sorry, but that doesn't allow me to see through doors or the future. Um, and then I'm surprised you didn't bring up our good buddy, Marcus Aurelius, because he talks about, specifically, we're reading, some of us, Juan and Gage and Tim and I were in a group doing Marcus Aurelius. And he does talk about when somebody irritates you, remember when you did the same thing. And he also warns you that you are going to encounter people today who are going to irritate you. And why are you surprised? Why are you surprised? And then, sort of the third thing, I think I generally don't have so much a problem with the because it's some of these things in psychology they're kind of Rorschach testy, because it's sort of like, yeah, you might dislike things that other people are doing because you do those things, but also you like people because they do the things you do. So it's not clear how that's helpful. But the other one that I know I have a trouble with is if it's not, I think that was shadow. I think that was Jung's shadow. But it's the second one is norm violations, which you kind of touched on a little bit. And it's like, if somebody's not valuing things the way I would or doing the things I would do, I probably get a little bit more quickly frustrated and judgmental than I should.
Good use of the mirror.
Fourth one. So I'm not, the mirror is very, very popular in Tibetan Buddhism as a teaching. It's Melong is the Tibetan word for mirror. But I think, and I'm gonna defend the guy walking up your driveway. The second sign says to back up. And to me, if I missed the first sign and I saw the second sign and I wasn't in a car, it wasn't clear. It wouldn't be clear to me if I were walking that I was meant to back up, because it's like, wait, I'm not in a car. This must pertain to cars. And so, again, I think it's good to remember that these things are dependent arisings. And, we've all experienced this. My favorite version of this is when your spouse comes home and complains about a coworker. And sometimes you go, yeah, Martha from accounting is right. But like you don't want to take the side of Martha from accounting because you're married to them. But yeah, contextually, people are like, yeah, it's okay though. But because I love you. Martha doesn't, so I'll side with you here. But yeah.
Good morning, Tim.
I can't.
So glad I came. Um, I was thinking again the theme of the mirror. You know, I I thought a lot about myself. I know that every time I use other people as a mirror, it's much dukkha, I mean, you just there's your bearing has to be something um, that is a consistent standard and not us inconsistent other human beings. I was thinking about also psychology in this, and in that when people consistently use others as a mirror, we say they have an identity problem. Some people would even say they have a personality disorder. Um, and I think that's wrong. I think that I'm kind of against the idea that people's personalities are disordered, but I think at times misguided. And so going through, oh, speak of protective dogs, excuse me. Um, but I think especially with the pressure to conform in this modern world, and certainly the political climate is not helping us because there's pressure to conform either in one camp or another, right? Whereas actually, as I was saying, uh, people freely vary. Um, and I guess the other thing I wanted to say about that was, wait a minute. Oh, as you keep referring back to the Dharma, for many of these people, the important thing is, values clarification, having that crystal clear view of, at least in the moment, what are your values today? What are those extrinsic values that can't talk today, that are your beacon, because it can't be that mirror. And so anyway, I thought, wonderful and relevant as always, Tim. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. So, when you talk about people having personality use, and you kind of rejected personality disorder, but I forget what phrasing you used. When they're reflecting other people or using them as mirrors too much, I'm thinking of an image of someone who's like a chameleon who changes depending on who's in the room. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes. Well, people who drastically, yes, change their presentation, right?
Right.
Depending on who is creating some kind of social pressure on them.
Yeah. So this would be using the mirror not in order to reflect on our practice, but using the mirror to fit in better and be more socially accepted.
It's really using the mirror as a creation of self when the mirror is other people.
Right.
So
It reminds me, there's a Star Trek. If I ever do a talk on this, I can bring up a clip from Star Trek, Next Generation. There's a He's on some diplomatic mission, and there's some uh, woman there. She's some special species of being who is uh, in her genes designed to match her mate. And she's like in this bar, and from each person she goes to, her personality completely changes to match the person she's with. And eventually, whoever she marries with, then she becomes like that person. And the person she's going to marry is a real jerk, and Picard is upset about that. And there's a whole story. But anyways, that's a story with someone whose genetics are to be a chameleon. It's interesting.
So if someone's genetics predisposes them to certain relations with the rest of the world, can we call them disordered?
I mean, it was science fiction, but no, this is who
it might be getting a little far flung from the Dharma, actually, but because I could get into this. So I'll bow out from here, literally.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Tim, can you hear me? This is Carl.
Yep, I hear you.
All right. Well, great. So your story about the guy in the driveway, it just flashed on me. Have you ever come across the term situational blindness?
No, but it sounds like a good term.
All right. So the way they demonstrate this is they have two people that are bouncing a basketball back and forth between them. And they're doing this, and that's all they're supposed to do. They just bounce the ball to the other person, and it comes back. And then there's a guy in a gorilla suit that walks right past them, and they don't notice him because they have this situational blindness, is what it's called, and they're focused on just on what they're doing, and everything else is kind of, not taken in. So the guy's walking there, he's obviously thinking something that doesn't go along with your warning signs. And I'm just wondering, how susceptible we are to situational blindness in our daily lives, where we're focused on something, we don't take in maybe other things that are going on around us. And, there you go, situational blindness. It just seemed flashed on that. Anyway, that's all I wanted to bring up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think some of that's Daniel Kahneman's work. The other one is they set up this experiment where somebody comes up to a service counter and they're talking to the clerk. They somehow distract the customer and literally switch the clerk. And most people never notice. Which is kind of weird. Brains are weird things. Brains are weird things.
Well, if we were to weaponize mindfulness, the way you mentioned before, if you were mindful enough, that wouldn't happen.
I know, right? They were just mindful about something different.
I used to work in a group home, and there was adults with developmental disabilities, and there was one guy, and I'm sure it was part of his cerebral palsy, or kind of a birth trauma syndrome, but he was really susceptible to other people's emotions. And he kind of, you could tell that he he sort of enjoyed it. Like somebody would be sad or crying, he would immediately just start crying, and the more intense the emotion, the quicker he would take it up. And it's kind of a nice thing how, like, to me, it was just how some intense emotions or things, especially like anger at somebody or something, has this momentum, that can carry from one person to another. Where some people, he was like a bit of a raw nerve in that way. One time, somebody slammed a door, or I think like the wind slammed a door in another part of the house, and he immediately put his hand through a window, and it was sincere. It was not like he was playing or anything, but it just seems like we all have some of that potential. He was just particularly um, susceptible to it, and it's like a kind of sympathy, really. How emotional material kind of floats around between people, and it can get flipped around. You could get angry. Somebody's angry at you. You're immediately angry at them. It's all very fraught. And doesn't the in the Pali Canon they always talk about the danger. It's always about emotional material or passions are being a danger, which is an interesting way of seeing it. Like there's these things come up really fast. You could make a bad decision really quickly before it's too late. Also, why would they make another Three Stooges movie? Is it any good? Is it funny? It's a
It's
Farrelly Brothers.
it's excellent. Um, the the Three Stooges, yeah, they have slapstick, but they have a lot of Dumb and Dumber kind of stuff, going on throughout the whole thing. So, it's I think it's hilarious. So
Yeah, it seems like a great exercise, to if you love those movies and you've seen them all those old movies, try to duplicate that whole thing, and it wouldn't be the same.
and Curly is almost, you can't imitate him. His comedy. There's some comedians you can't try but the guy that doesn't comes as close as you're gonna. Um, he does a really good job.
All right. We think that's it. All right, Tim. Thank you very much. Next week, our speaker will be Rachel Sarin Vilsack. And just a little bit. Oh, so no, I lost it. I had it. I lost it. The calendar. What's coming up for Hokyoji? Hokyoji is currently knee deep in the mud season, but starting April 6th, we will have an online study group running for 6 weeks. They will take being time as the topic, Dogen's fascicle Uji, and that should be great. On April 11th is Hokyoji's annual membership and board meeting in the Twin Cities at the Linden Hills Park facility. It would also be online. If you would like to join online, you can go to the calendar link on the hokyoji.org's main page and join. It'll be from 1 to 3 Central Time. April 16th is Caring for the Land. And so if you want to come down and help care for the land, that would be great. You can sign up on the website. And that, thank you everybody for being here, and have a good day. Got to close with the 3 bow. Well, we're okay. It'll be fine. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. All right, now we're done. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.